All right. So I was just about to start wondering why. So I think this is good. We've got a few minutes past 9 o'clock. Welcome to the last day of the conference, everybody. It's been awesome so far. I'm Dan Scott from Laurentian University. Hey, Mike. Hey, George. What I'm here to talk to you about today is one of the nice, cool pieces of functionality that I believe came in Evergreen 1.60 called Bib Template. Bib Template will rock your world if you're not using it already. So my motivation to give this presentation was that I went through a list of all of the Evergreen libraries that are listed on the Evergreen wiki, which is useful if you want to compare notes with what other people are doing and seeing how far behind the curve you are. I'm always concerned with that. And as it turns out, when I went through that list and checked out people's catalogs, most people are using the out-of-the-box defaults. So in 1.60, there's a few set defaults, but I'll show you an example of those. So when we went live in May of 2009, we had what you could call constructive criticism on what we needed to change in our catalog, because the defaults out of the box were about 13 fields. They were often blank. They didn't have a lot of the data that our users really wanted to see and they're accustomed to seeing. We actually had a report from one faculty member who, when we had launched, said, I couldn't find any subjects. I eventually found the Slim Pack, and it was a wonderful experience because suddenly I had like a full display of all the record details that I was used to seeing in some of our old ones. So if you're familiar with the basic catalog, that's not a happy story. So after a few days and nights, and a few more days and a few more nights, I was able to use Bib Template to get a much better experience for our users. So in the updated presentation, the circle of sharing, Bib Template, I think the development of it was really spurred on by Alexander O'Neill at University of Prince Edward Island, who created something in October 2008 that he shared with the Evergreen community, which gave you the ability to pull individual mark tags and individual mark fields into the record details display. And I remember being pretty amazed when Alexander shared this, and Mike and I looked at it, and we loved the idea, I think, and the execution Mike kind of rewrote took a different approach, and I think a much sort of overall, a general, more reusable approach called Bib Template. So I'm going to share by teaching you what I've learned so far, and I've by no means pushed Bib Template to the boundaries. There's still a lot more that we can do with it. But your role is to go home and, as ambassadors to the rest of the library world, make your Evergreen instances look as good as they can be as well. So you've got a responsibility after this presentation. So just by way of demonstration, this is the default results that you would see. I think this is from our catalog. The standard 10 fields or so, some blank fields, not a whole lot of data there, and then a skinned approach, what we're using at Laurentian University. A few more fields, but they're all pretty much showing data that actually exists in the record, not showing up if there is no data that corresponds. We've got links. Again, it's an adaptation of sort of one of the demonstrations that Mike Rylander put together, but more specified by the type of subject. This is the direction you can go. It's something that at least in the academic library, we found our users have responded very positively to. So the purpose of this presentation is to tell you how to customize that to your own purposes. So came in 1.6. The goal was to make it easy to customize your record displays, and not just record displays, but that's what our focus is on primarily today, and to break free from Mark XML and Mark to give you access to metadata formats that Evergreen can produce, like mods, simplified, sort of in some ways a simplified representation of bibliographic data, FGDC, which we created for Natural Resources Canada, so you can pull out the geographic data that you might be interested in displaying for a maps library, for example, rather than having to go to the MARC itself to pull it out. So you need to know at least one of the metadata formats, and because we're librarians, MARC XML is still the most familiar. In some ways, I mean, it's the most granular, so that's what I think all of my examples are going to be, but you don't need to know very much. And if you really want to get down and dirty with Bib Template, then knowing JavaScript is a requirement. Knowing a little bit about CSS3's selector syntax, I'll give you a few of the examples, like sort of the most useful examples that you could use. And then understanding how XML works is a pretty core piece as well. So if you want to create your own skin, you can, assuming you've got access to a Unix shell on your web machine, you can type these 3 commands. The first, there we go, we've got a pointer. The first one is where all of your skins live. You can copy, say, Craftsman or default. I mean, most of what people seem to be using is still the default skin called default, rather than the Craftsman skin, which is now the default as of 1.6. So anyways, we'll copy, say, Craftsman in this case. And then we descend further into the directory of the new skin that we created, super XML rdetail, and everything that you need to enhance your bibliographic record displays in one file called rdetailsummary.xml. So let's go ahead as a quick example. A bibliography note, something that's nice to display in your record. If you've got the data, you might as well show it. So we'll add it. What that requires is adding a row. Now, I was hoping to have internet access. I don't have it at the moment, but that's okay. We'll worry about that later and see if we've got time for it. So there's the bibliographic display is based on a HTML table. So HTML tables have table. Then you've got a TR for a table row, and within each table row there is a TD, which is a table cell. So the first cell within that row is the label that'll appear on the left-hand side of the display. The second TD, second cell, is the actual data that would go inside it. So what I've shown you is a crazy span tag to display the data. You don't actually need the span tag, and I'll show you a different way of doing that later. But this is the key part. Inside the cell, you say type equals opaque / slot data. We'll just pretend that's magic for now. And the query attribute is data field tag equals 504. All right, so I'm going to jump far ahead to where we've got an example of MARC XML, because not everybody may be familiar with MARC XML. MARC XML is an expression of the MARC record format in an XML format. So you've got a root element of record that contains a leader, control fields, and data fields. The data field element is what you'd be familiar with everything above 009. They have an attribute of tag, and then indicator 1, indicator 2, and then one or more subfields will be contained within a data field. So back on the query, when I said query equals data field tag equals 504, I'm saying give me all of the data field elements that have a tag attribute matching 504 and the contents that they're in. So now I can jump way back. That makes sense? Okay.
So you could define the indicators too?
You could say if, you could limit it further, so you could say, and indicator 2 must be, say, 3 or something like that. Yeah, you can define things pretty explicitly. All right, so we put this in place, and the result, this is the before picture of Art Rhino. Sorry, Art couldn't be here today. We miss you, Art, but we are thinking of you. Art Rhino is at the University of Windsor. He's been a force in open source library software for many years, and this is his book that he published in 2004. It happens to have a 504 field, which makes it a really good example. So if we add this to the Craftsman skin, you'll notice down at the bottom, when we reload the record, bibliography node appears, and it pulls in the 504A contents from the record and displays it. Pretty simple, right? Okay. So you can now go ahead and do that with every tag subfield combination that you want, and you've done. So,
Go ahead.
got half an hour. Excellent.